Watch this. When you can't read the spin, the net tells you exactly how to handle every short ball.
就是啊，
Here's a problem almost every amateur player runs into. A short serve comes in, and you can't tell whether it's topspin or backspin. You see the ball pop up off the table and you freeze. What do I do with this? Today I want to give you a surprisingly simple rule that takes the guesswork out of receiving short serves. Forget about reading the spin for a moment. Instead, use the net as your reference. When the ball bounces and reaches its highest point, compare that height to the top of the net. Ask yourself one question. Is the ball above the net or below it? That single comparison tells you exactly how to respond.
我准备要击球了，他蹦这个点这个高度跟球网比，他是在球网上边还是在球网下边？
When you can't read the spin, let the ball bounce and rise to its highest point. If that peak is above the net, you have clearance. Keep the racket at a safe height and simply push forward, drive straight ahead into the ball. You don't need to create any arc. Think about it. If it were backspin, the ball would dip down after the bounce. If it were topspin, it would kick up. Either way, at that above the net height, a direct forward strike clears safely.
他不往上跑了吗？以这个高度给他一个调整距离，直接往前走，你就不用制造弧线了。
So the rule is straightforward. The ball comes in, bounces on your side if its arc peaks above the net. Flick it forward directly, just go straight ahead. Now, what if the ball stays below the net? Whether it's backspin or topspin, you have to get it over that net, so you must create arc. Lift first, then direct forward. When you're lifting like this, focus on placement, not power. Keep it controlled. Because if it happens to be topspin and you swing hard while lifting, the ball will sail long, you'll overshoot the table very easily. So below the net means create arc first. Place the ball and stay safe.
过来处你就看你能抢到哪个点，是不是？咱俩是坐着，我站在这儿打，你看我现在就不用看你就随便
My
发一个。
partner sends one in a bit high. Watch, I catch it at the top of the bounce. Above the net, so I don't need to create any arc. I go straight forward regardless of the spin. When the ball sits up high, it's simple. But when I can't catch that high point, watch, I use a short, compact push. Topspin doesn't fly off, backspin still gets over. The priority here is placement, get it on the table first. Once you're consistently landing it, then you work on adding quality.
完了你再解决第二把问题。对，
Next, honestly, I learned this the hard way by getting punished over and over until I figured out what works within my own skill level. You have to be resourceful. The right technique isn't always the textbook perfect one. It's the shortest path to consistency for your level. For amateur players, the most controllable short ball technique is a push flick, a compact forward push without wrist snap. Do not move your wrist around randomly. When you're feeling hot and confident, sure, you can add wrist. Professionals flick with a full wrist snap for that whip effect. But the feedback I get from students is always the same. In matches, the errors pile up. Without the wrist snap, you won't generate that whip crack power, and your flick ends up with no real quality. If your flick has no quality, all you've done is start a fight you can't finish. You've created a problem without the ability to solve it. You need to be able to control the table before you try to flip it over. So here's the progression. Step 1. Read the bounce height, compare it to the net, push forward with placement. Step 2. If the ball dips below the net, use a short, compact lift, a quick upward push of the racket face. Keep the stroke brief. The backspin can't grab the ball enough to drag it down because you've carried it up and onto the table. That's your foundation.
上台了，是不是啊？至于那个很多我看也刷到不少。
Now I see a lot of videos online teaching you to brush up aggressively. 10 fingers pointing up, friction all the way, spin the ball over with a big arc. Honestly, most of us can't do that. And it actually goes against the physics. Think about a banana flick. By the time you rotate your wrist through contact to the release point, you're talking about well over 180 degrees of rotation. How much actual wrist range do you have? Maybe 70-odd degrees. You simply cannot cancel out heavy backspin with friction alone. It's physically impossible. So instead, you use this push lift technique. Even a player like Ma Long uses this kind of compact lift on heavy backspin short balls. You carry the ball up to about net height. You want to lift it just a touch above the net to leave yourself a safety margin on the arc. If you push too flat against heavy backspin, the ball will still dive into the net. So aim slightly above net height. Now once you've lifted it there, what do? Stay composed. Under control, without lunging in recklessly, push the ball to a specific placement and get it on the table. Then immediately reset and prepare for the rally. For amateur players, I'd say this approach solves about half your problems on the forehand side, maybe half your short ball situations, just with this one idea. It's the most effective receive strategy you can build on. Now let's talk about deception, the shoulder fake. The key is that your shoulder and your hand move in opposite directions, and the shoulder always leads. When you step into receive, let your shoulder commit first while your hand stays back, loaded and hidden. You drive your shoulder toward one side, your opponent's eyes lock onto that shoulder and they read it as your hitting direction. But your hand goes the opposite way.
你肩往这头一顶，对方看到你是你这个肩部要往那头打，手往它相反方向走，这就是晃跳，啊，是不是啊？或者是
You can reverse it too, shoulder drives to the right, hand finishes to the left. Same principle, opposite direction. This works especially well on the backhand receive. Watch again, the shoulder leads out first. It's still a push, still compact, but the shoulder sells the direction before the hand reveals the real target. Does the motion have to be huge? No, you don't need an exaggerated lunge. A small, sharp shoulder shift is enough because of how visual processing works. Your opponent's eyes pick up the first large body part that moves, that's the shoulder. It registers in their brain, they start committing, and by the time your hand redirects, they're already leaning the wrong way. On the receive, even a subtle shoulder fake forces the server to hesitate before stepping around to attack. Once you add the shoulder fake, your opponent freezes, they simply don't dare move, especially in doubles. They have no idea which side you're sending it to, so they hesitate. That hesitation is your advantage. Now the fake has to be soft and fluid, not stiff. Think of it as a smooth roll of the shoulder, not a jerk. And here's the other critical point for short ball play: chase speed, not power. You want to push the ball quickly, not push it hard. The moment you try to muscle a short ball, you lose control and make errors. Short balls are never about force. They're about quickness, placement, and spin variation. Watch when I add the hook. Once that connects, it's practically unreadable. So remember the sequence. Shoulder commits first, then the hand follows forward with the push. Those two cannot happen at the same time. If they move together, there's no deception, the opponent reads you instantly. A common mistake is moving the whole body in a circle, shoulder and hand rotating together like a wheel. That's just spinning in place. You end up faking yourself out instead of your opponent. It looks stiff and it has zero deceptive effect. The correct motion is shoulder pushes out first, then the arm extends forward with the push. And here's a detail that matters: keep the racket on a level plane. Don't let your hand rise or drop during the motion. Your beginning height and your ending height should be roughly the same. After you finish the push, the racket should still be at roughly the same height it started. Keep that plane flat, especially through the second half of the stroke. Never let a height difference creep in, because even a small vertical gap at your end of the table turns into a big miss by the time the ball reaches the other side. It sails long or pops up. Keep it level and the ball stays tight to the net.
是啊，这不广角跟那个长角的区别。
哎呦，我这家学摄影这家挺专业。明白了。
近大远小啥的。
OK，好，请问我们有没有收获？